If it's nerdy, we're into it.
Gaming, movies, television, wrestling, comics, whatever. We are Kyle Eckert and Chris Heck, two lifelong friends with a passion for the world of geekery.
And this is the GeeK KetchUP podcast.
Welcome back, GeeK KetchUP family. I am Chris Heck.
And I'm Kyle Eckert.
Today we're continuing on with Season 2, and for Chapter 30, we are chatting yet again about one of our favorite topics from the world of geekery, comics. After putting so much focus into the recent X-Men event, X of Swords, we both had large piles building up with the other titles in our pool lists. And since Kyle and I have spent the last couple of weeks catching up on those neglected stories, we want to take a moment to share about what titles we've been reading, what's been happening with those characters, and which books have stood out above the rest. But before we get started, we both want to send a big thank you to everyone for listening to the show and share that we truly appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us. If you've enjoyed GeeK KetchUp, then be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a chapter, and leave us a review to let us know how you think we're doing. You can also find us on social media to get updates on the show and content from the world of geekery. GeeK KetchUp Podcast on Facebook and YouTube, at GeeK KetchUp Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and you can find links to all of these accounts in the show notes below and on our website, geekketchuppodcast.com. There's even links to our Patreon page and PayPal if you'd like to support the show, but the absolute best thing you can do is simply share GeeK KetchUp with your friends and family. So Kyle, I know we've got a lot of great comic books to discuss, and we're going to dive into that shortly, but before we do, I want us to share a bit about a few things that we've been up to over the past week or so.
So, one thing I know we've both been getting into recently is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, as 34-year-old grown men, we are taking our first adventure into D&D.
Yes, indeed. And I know for a really long time we joked, and I tell this all the time, that usually we always say in another universe amongst the multiverse, somewhere we played D&D as kids, or we played Magic the Gathering as kids. But for whatever reason, in this universe, we didn't play D&D. We played Pokemon instead of Magic the Gathering and this and that. But finally, the multiverses have aligned or combined. And it is now, as 34-year-old men, we are taking our first adventure into D&D. And it's all very new, very overwhelming, but also exciting and interesting.
Yeah, one of our close friends, Alex, he had started recently, the last couple of months, I think, with a D&D group and his own first-time adventure as a player, and he was mentioning just a couple days ago that he was wanting to learn about being a dungeon master and kind of taking a shot at that, and we kind of just jumped in and said, well, never been a better time. We can check out some D&D for the first time, let you practice on us. We can learn the game and see if it's something that we would like. We're both longtime RPG players.
Right.
So it's got a lot of similar crossovers. Just one's digital video games and the other one is you manually doing it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of one of those things that, when it came to you playing guitar or us starting the podcast or anybody starting to attempt something new, you just have to dive in and do it.
Yep.
So for a really long time, we said it would be fun to try it out, but we didn't have anybody that could kind of lead us through the process. And of course, our good buddy Alex, he jumped in with another group of friends and kind of got his feet wet and then brought it over to us. And we kind of said, if you are comfortable being a dungeon master for us, we'd certainly like to try, see if it is for us, build a character, go on a couple small adventures, and then maybe a larger thing, see if it's something that we like to do, bring in a couple of our other friends as a group, especially during COVID times. It's a great way to stay connected with your friends. And for us, friends that are spread out all across the country in different time zones and states and everything. So it's given us a way to stay connected as friends, as these things do.
Yeah, honestly, I think that was about 50% of the reason why I got so excited when it first started getting brought up, just simply because throughout all of COVID, we haven't done a whole lot of the group, Zoom meetings or virtual happy hours that folks have done for whatever reason. You and I, of course, we're talking all the time and we're doing these video chats for the podcast, but with the larger group of folks, we haven't done that. It's just been maybe an occasional video game night or session, here and there. And so this was almost twofold. So it's like, okay, we can learn Dungeons and Dragons and have some fun in this new arena, but also it'll give us a reason every couple of weeks or once a month to jump on with the larger group and get some connection and some chance to hang out with each other, drink some of those beers virtually, but while we're also, adventuring through a cavern and taking down orcs.
Right. Yeah, of course. And as anyone gets older in life, you have to build in time for this and maintain friendships and connections. So this is really taking that to the next level where, like I said, we've got these friends that are spread across the country, and we're not able to just do, hey, a Thursday HH at the local tavern or local pub. So now we've taken it into the D&D world to do our regular Thursday HH at the local tavern or pub.
Yeah. So it's all been kind of a whirlwind, and we have not gotten to the point of adventuring, but just a couple nights ago, we were able to pull together on Discord, get the team together, get the adventuring group together, and we all walked through building out our initial characters for the first time. And that was an experience in itself, seeing how in-depth everything is with the races and whatnot. And none of it's very different than what you see in like an in-depth RPG, like a Skyrim or something along those lines, where you really have to sit and put a lot of time into doing things. But it was more manual. It was more of reading it out of a book, comparing things without, the use of virtual or visuals that you get out of a game and all that kind of stuff. Is more imagination.
Yeah.
And then looking at the character sheets and kind of some of the different things that go along with that. But it was cool just to pull together just for that, even though we didn't adventure. It was kind of like an adventure in itself.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to figure out this process of building these imaginary characters.
Yeah, and like I said, it's all very new and overwhelming. Just building a character, and that's coming from somebody that has played RPGs and loves RPGs, so it has a little bit of experience in building a character with different classes and races and abilities. Even that experience, like, it translated a little bit, but there were moments the other night where you still felt lost. You're like, whoa, I am just deep in the weeds of the handbook, and if I pick, this race, but this class, it's going to give me this down the line, but it's hard to look down the line because you don't even know what level 1 experience is like. So,
right, yeah.
We got through it, and it was a ton of fun. Just hanging out with the guys was a good time. Getting our characters built was a ton of fun, and I imagine with each step we take, it's going to get more and more exciting because we're going to go on to do bigger and better things, but we're also going to have a better understanding of what we're doing.
Right.
So when we continue to do it in the future, or if we build a new, we get so far and then want to build a new character, we're going to have that experience and be able to make something better, unique to our play styles.
Yeah, 100%. I thought it was cool to see how everybody took a little bit different approaches to creating the characters, and it was surprising. I know we were talking about it the night of, but with the 4 of us all building characters, not talking about any of it ahead of time, none of us picked the same races, none of us picked the same classes, and so it immediately showed you, like, one of the great things that you always hear about Dungeons and Dragons, where everybody's personalities really kind of come out. There's obviously some rules and some boxes to play within, but
right,
you got a lot more freedom here than what you do maybe in a video game, because ultimately most video games are going to have just a certain subset that the developers choose. So maybe the preferred race or whatever that you would like isn't even in the game as an option.
Right.
Whereas here you kind of had more flexibility and there was lots of choices. So obviously we can't get into too much here, and this is still the beginning of our journey, but what was the character you ended up creating, at least or you're thinking about at the moment?
So I ended up that night looking at gnomes because, and like you pointed it out, we all took a different approach to creating our characters. So I'll start with my base and kind of what I wanted out of my character versus looking to do a specific thing. And I was really looking to build a character that was very in tune with nature.
Yeah.
And so naturally becoming a gnome lent itself to that. And ultimately I settled on a forest gnome because of my inevitable class and a druid that I picked. So I wanted this interconnected with nature and animals type vibe, and the smaller stature of a gnome seemed to fit that really well. And the druid being able to interact with nature and weather and magic and spells and things like that all seem to fit this tree beard crossed with poison ivy mixed with a gnome type vibe that I wanted.
Yeah, it'd be super cool. And I didn't know if you thought about this, but when I first heard about your character, I was curious because we don't see gnomes very often in video games, and even some of those abilities we don't see very often in video games. So I was curious if some of that was the reason why you were attracted to go that route. Was obviously things you like, but also something maybe you don't get to do very often.
Yeah, for sure. I do like playing the healer whenever we play games like that. Like, I'm not always an inaction type person. I almost prefer to be the support character when you play group games. But it was also in the mindset that knowing the personality of the people we were playing with, there were going to be people that wanted to be in the thick of things, wanted the axe and sword and shield,
Sure.
and kind of getting into the fight. So my natural personality and wanting to play a support character factored in. And I was like, oh, well, the gnome is just something different. Like,
Yeah.
it's something, like you said, it's smaller, it's out of the way, you can easily not notice it. So, yeah, I would say a lot of that did factor into you don't get to play as very many gnomes or dwarves in RPGs like that.
Right. Well, and I asked because for me, I went the total opposite direction. And I did that because there was a bit of overwhelmingness to it when you started reading through the player's handbook. You started looking at, the races, the classes, and then everything that comes with them with these different like backgrounds and bloodlines and how that can impact you. And so I actually kind of settled back down into a comfort zone and said, okay, for character one, I am going to essentially duplicate what I typically do build in video games, and that often is essentially a elf or a high elf like battle mage.
Right.
I like to have the sword or axe in one hand and fireballs in the other and get that combination of, range and in close power. So I always tend to go that way, or really just mages and magic and
Yeah.
wizards and warlocks. That's kind of the deal. So I opted to go for a high elf with, I think, draconic blood. So he's got some interesting benefits and traits that are related to dragons as a source of the power, but it's a sorcerer. So I'll probably be a little less sword and axe wielding and mostly just magic. But for me, it was almost like, okay, I kind of know the lore and the realm behind these races and this type of character. So while I'm learning all the other things, at least those things will be kind of normal to me.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes, right? But that was just like my approach on the flip side. But once you said gnome that night, I was like, I kind of was envious because I was like, I feel like that was something that you wouldn't see coming. You don't get to choose a lot in video games. So I was like, that could have been a cool way to take it.
Yeah. And like I said, the entire basis was me wanting to talk to animals. Like, kind of that was the vibe. Like, especially when I saw certain spells that allowed me to talk and control animals, like talk to animals and control animals and kind of get information. I was like, yes, this is the direction I want to go. And then we're going to touch on a little later. Another game that we've been playing lately inspired me to also want to be able to control nature
Oh, okay.
in like that poison ivy vibe and be able to bring up plants and move mounds of dirt and things like that. So it was just this whole vibe. I was like, this is just kind of the personality I want to be within this realm. So and it went from there. I also thought being able to talk with animals would be a fun little twist for our buddy that's going to be our dungeon master, especially when he told us that he was going to do animal voices. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as I told him that I was going to be a forest gnome and I had prepared everybody that was on the Discord that night, hey, I just want to talk to animals the whole time. That's prepare for me to do that at every opportunity. He kind of laughed. He was like, that's exciting because it's going to give me an opportunity to do animal voices, as we work through our adventures. So it's all very new to us, but I am excited to get it started, get our first adventure, see if we like it.
Yeah, definitely got to see if it really works out for us, and it's all stuff that we've all been into. And you mentioned at the beginning, like how we didn't end up with D&D as kids and things like that. It is surprising simply because we've all been, to some extent into a lot of those elements and themes and stuff that come along with Dungeons and Dragons. But I've always kind of looked at it from the standpoint that we really grew up in the first real like video game generation, like in home.
Mm-hmm.
beyond the arcades when everybody had a Nintendo in the house or whatever, and you know, these types of games and stories, tabletop games, were turning into video games, and that's how people were experiencing them.
Right.
So it's like we were doing the same things, just more in that digital virtual environment, you know, whereas others beforehand, you were kind of forced to take it into your own hands and do it in the more analog manual environment.
Yeah, yeah.
Now all these years later, we're coming full circle.
Yeah, we're coming full circle back to, well, it's, and I think you said it earlier, it's the creativity of it all
Yeah.
that really hooks us, because video games, you do get locked into what they're presenting you, and you can do this. It's like step by step building, like a put it together house. Like, you know, certain developers, you can pick this living room, but once you pick this living room, you have to choose from these 3 kitchens. Like, I know there's a couple developers up around here that kind of have neighborhoods that are built that way.
Yeah.
So certain video games can lock you in, versus D&D. It's a total open world that if you want to do things, a race and a class that might not mix well, you can still do it. There's nothing going to stop you. Your adventuring may be more difficult, but that's what you're signing up for.
Right.
Versus a video game might not let you. It'll lock you into that. And I also think it's going to be exciting because I'm thinking of the original Final Fantasy.
Okay.
Like Final
Yeah.
Fantasy 1 on on NES, where you kind of had some selection choices. You could pick the white mage, the black mage, the red mage, warriors, and things like that, but you always had a team of 3. And you controlled all 3, so you could really pick and choose and dictate what you want to do.
Right.
This should be an interesting twist on it, because I can only control myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I'm going to need to rely on another person to bring that other thing to the table.
Yeah. It won't be so like cross-functional for you.
Yeah.
You know, there will be times where you have to be patient, and maybe we don't have everything we need in the group, or whatever it may be. So definitely excited to get into it. And I'm sure that as we get to experience some more and get some more in-depth thoughts on adventuring and group dynamics and all of that, maybe we'll bring it back and we'll bring it as a chapter here down the line when we can speak to things a little bit more in depth, or, you know, chronicle our journey, like I said, as guys in our 30s doing our first Dungeons and Dragons experiences. But I'm sure that there'll be lots of laughs and lots of awkwardness at times.
Oh, yeah. And a full learning experience. Like, coming back and being able to do a chapter on it would be good. I imagine we'll look back at this little blip here of us talking about creating our characters and realizing maybe how wrong we were about the entire process. You know,
true.
like I've come in here and said, like, oh, this is what I want to be. And somebody out there is listening and like, well, then you definitely shouldn't have done Forest Gnome Druid. Like, you know, you should have done this or that. But, you know, we're going to live and learn and make mistakes and just figure this whole world out. It's been around for ages.
Yeah.
So, you know, time for us to get into it and see what all the hype's about.
Yeah, for sure. If anybody's got any tips or tricks or anything like that, Dungeons and Dragons related, definitely reach out and let us know. But let's jump over into the other thing, because you and I have really been getting at it these last like 2 weeks, playing a lot of video games on top of what we've been doing here with the D&D. And you mentioned it a little bit ago about being an inspiration for some of your new character, and I know why that is. But you found this game on the Switch, and it's been out for a couple of years, but it's essentially new to us because we hadn't picked up on it.
Yeah.
But it was called Lost Castle, and it's a roguelike game. And I think we got it on sale for like $4 or $5, normally maybe $10 on the Switch store. So not a huge investment, but it's been an absolute ton of fun.
Oh, yeah. And I'm always on the hunt in the Switch store. I feel like every time I log into my Switch, I'm going to the store, I'm looking at the deals, because you can really find good, like, 99-cent games or $2 games or $8 games that end up standing the test of time and being fun. And if they're not, who cares? It's $1.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the vibe here. I went into the Switch store. I was actually on the hunt for a solid roguelike game and stumbled across Lost Castle. Like you said, it was normally 10, got it for 4, played it, and it was just this perfect little mashup, beat 'em up with an SNES look, but with roguelike features and a pretty unique little, you know, skill tree. And then the online multiplayer is what hooked me because I played a couple single player campaigns and was having fun working through the randomly generated dungeons, and then saw, well, there's this multiplayer aspect and it's only $4. So I put the word out to you and a couple other buddies. You ended up scooping it up, and we started playing multiplayer and having a good time.
Yeah, I find it hard these days to resist a good roguelike. Just over the years as more and more come out, the more I play, it is just a game type that is very agreeable with me for whatever reason. And so I looked into this one. The $4 price tag made it super easy to pick it up, no matter what. And it was really all on the multiplayer, to be honest. More than anything,
Yeah.
the multiplayer is what intrigued me here, simply because that's not something you see a whole lot in roguelikes. They're typically single player games, kind of RPG-ish in a way, or arcade-ish. And this one, just threw that in there and it kind of took it next level. It's got a fantasy setting, so you're kind of running through like dungeons and forests and things like that with knight armor and different monsters, from skeletons to giant spiders and orcs, everything in between. We could do probably a whole chapter just on this game based on how much we've played, but it's got a cool premise. There's like 5 levels. You're working through them. You die, you collect currency to upgrade a skill tree that is persistent, constantly make you stronger. So you see that in some roguelikes, other times not. But what I like that it does here is that you get a little bit of a combination of some styles where you're getting that persistent skill tree to upgrade yourself, but then every run of the game is very different. It's very much, in this way, it's kind of like Hades. I played that recently. I know that got a lot of good press last year, but it's, you're getting different weapons, you're getting different power-ups, you're getting different armors. Every bit of it is all procedural generated on the levels. So,
Yeah.
Sometimes you're getting certain items in one run that you're not going to get in the next. And so every single run really does have a nice, unique feel. And that's something that not every roguelike gets right with that aspect. Because some of them, like Dead Cells and stuff, you're kind of playing very, very similar levels over and over again, learning the patterns, even though you're dying.
Yeah, and well, the varying in weapons is really the big thing, because I know when it starts, you're in a cell, and then you come out, and before you head into the very first castle, you're given a weapon up front, whether it's a broadsword or dual swords or a staff, and then you're given options to switch out.
Right.
And then as you open chests along the way, you get different sets of armor, different upgrades, different side characters that will also help you, food, and things like that. And I didn't realize that not all roguelikes worked in this manner. I kind of assumed I don't play too many of them. I've played a few, and unfortunately, and most of them have been on the Switch, and unfortunately, the ones that I have played haven't been exactly what I was looking for. Like, most of them have been a little longer form.
Yeah.
Another one that I recently picked up was called For the King, and that one is fun, but it was a little slower pace. I wanted that like quick pace roguelike where I could pick up and put it down. If I only had time for half an hour session, I could quit out with no real penalty. Yes, like any souls or gold that I collect are going to carry over and things like that.
Right.
So this one really was. It was just between the multiplayer, the varying weapons and armor and generated, I think it has a good look.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's got that 16-bit SNES look to it. So it was just the perfect storm for me.
Well, and it's got very simple mechanics, and it does play, even though I think it was made in 2015. So it's been out for just, 4 or 5 years, whatever. But they have kind of those very old school mechanics to it. Like when you're attacking, it's got a good feel. You do like different combos depending on the weapons you have. But, if you're attacking, you can't move.
Yeah.
So if you get an attack that comes back, you oftentimes get hit with it, and that's something that we used to see a lot back in the day, and with more modern controls and stuff, maybe you get a little more fluidity. You don't have those limitations, but so for being built essentially as a modern 16-bit game, I think I liked how it had some of those same aspects to it that created a little bit more of a difficulty in itself just because of those limitations.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think that its simplicity in this game makes it so easy to just pick up, play, get your bearings, and then you kind of right off to the races. You can go through quick runs, right back into it as you die, which is always a plus for some of these because, when the goal is to grind with some of these games, you need that ability to just get right back in, or that draw to be like, yes, let me just make one more run, one more run, one more run. And it's done well. I know I've been playing a lot on my own. You and I have had probably 2 or 3 nights at least since we picked it up, where we've sat for
I think so.
3-4 hours just run after run, and hadn't beat it together yet, but we were getting really close the last time we played.
Yeah, we made it to the 5th level, or the 5th area, pretty far. I think we hit the first mini boss and ultimately didn't make it, ended up dying. But you're right, like that quick replay is where it's at, because I think even when we're playing together, we have like a half-hour run and we're like, we can't end on we can't end on a bad one, and then when you have a really good one, a 45-minute to 60-minute run, you're like, okay, that's the one that I'm comfortable ending on. It was a solid run.
Yeah.
We got really far, saw a couple new bosses, maybe unlocked a couple new treasures, and feel successful.
Well, and that's one thing that's pretty cool, seeing the new bosses, is there's a lot of bosses actually in this game, and had been regularly seeing new ones. And what's nice is that every time you beat a boss, it adds new loot, more powerful loot into the loot pool for your future runs. But I was actually finally taking a look at the compendium, and I don't know if the compendium, and I don't know if you had looked at that yet, but we've probably only touched on about half the bosses that are in the game.
Oh, I hadn't looked at the bosses. I looked at weapons and a couple of the basic enemies, but I didn't look at the boss area.
Yeah, I looked at it, and literally I'd only had about half the bosses that were unlocked. The rest were still question marks. So there's still a lot out there. And I have to say, leading into this, when I was doing my prep for this episode, I did not have the game beat, but I was playing this morning.
Oh?
And hot off the presses, I actually beat it for the first time, the first run.
Nice.
This morning, just a couple hours ago. Just got a good run. Didn't have the best weapons, I didn't think, or wasn't as set up as I have been in others, but I think between, getting that skill tree more and more built out, and just the way the random drops came this time, I was able to make it through. I had lots of little helpers with me and was able to put down a lot of damage, and finally got over the hump.
That's huge. Yeah, you had sent me a text a little earlier today and told me what all helpers you had kind of flanking you, because that's part of it. You can get like the little side puppy or a ghost that follows you around and provides extra armor. And one of the things that I kind of mentioned when I was building out my D&D character is one of the weapon classes allows you to spring up basically little Venus flytraps that spit poison.
Yeah.
And it was that inspiration for my D&D character that I wanted somebody that could control vines or like create little secondary characters from nature that can help me.
Yeah.
We'll see if that works out the same way in D&D as it does in Lost Castle, but those types of weapons and those little helpers I could definitely see benefiting you on a longer run, because they help take the action away from you.
Yeah, it definitely helped with the aggro. They were putting out more damage, regularly, even if I couldn't fire weapons. I also got the backpack, so I had significantly more space for extra offensive items. And the big difference, though, I think, was that I was just getting a lot of health items. So, I was pretty much always maxed out on bananas and drumsticks and apples, which really helped. So I was able to keep my health up, even though I didn't have the highest HP or defense that I've had in other runs. So it worked out, but without any spoilers, I will say it's not the end of the story. It could be just the beginning.
Wow, okay. And that was one thing I had been a little concerned about with this game, and that it was only 5 levels, and yes, it takes some effort to get there to the 5th level. And once you get there, it is by no means easy.
Right.
Like, they make you work for it. But I was a little concerned about replayability and like long-term playability, knowing that there were only 5 levels, and definitely where I am in like the mid-30s, I think I'm almost level 40. The first 2 areas get redundant.
Yeah.
But I'm sure all roguelikes kind of fall into that trap to some extent, where like level 1 just you play it 1,000 times, so it's no longer difficult. So you're just kind of blasting through it
Yeah.
to get to level 2. So it had some concern in me that, okay, well, when we do beat this, is there going to be a reason to continue to build out the skill tree or build out our characters? Because we have already beat this. Why would I come back?
Yeah, I mean, there typically is a lot of end game stuff in some of these games. Like, I know Hades had a lot of it, where once you get through it the first time, you start unlocking all these different modifiers you can put on the game, and you're still working to get the rest of the unlocks done. And so, as I said, only having beaten like half the bosses, there's still a whole lot to unlock and work through. I didn't get to do another run after I beat it earlier, so I don't know exactly what the levels are going to look like. But one thing I will say was that once I hit level 50, like my personal guy in my skill tree, I noticed that I was starting to get many more monsters, and even some of the later monsters were coming into the earlier levels.
Yeah.
So I feel like even before I beat it, just hitting level 50, the game upped the difficulty or had a change to it. To like, it felt like when I was playing solo that I was getting the amount of monsters that you and I were getting when we were playing 2-player, since we knew it kicked up the numbers.
Sure.
So it's definitely adjusting a little bit. And then the one thing I did see though was that it unlocked what they called nightmare mode as an option.
Ooh.
So I don't know if that'll come with more rewards and all of that, but definitely some other things to make you want to continue to play. But I beat it and I was like, oh. I was like so excited. And I was like, I can't text you. I was like, I can't let you know because we're going to be talking about it here on this chapter. So that is one of the most big headlines that I could drop right now, was that got that first win down on Lost Castle.
That's pretty sweet. That is pretty sweet. I'm jealous because I'm like, well, I found the game first. I played it longer, and Chris has already beaten it before I even got that. Like before I've even seen what the final boss is, because outside the mini boss that we hit on level 5 is actually the farthest I'd ever made it.
They're beasties.
So I'm a little jealous. The other area of this game that we haven't even touched at all is the PvP.
There's PvP in this game?
There's PvP in this game, and I wasn't even sure. Yeah, if you had saw that, because you go into online and you go into matchmaking, and you can either play local, you can play arena mode or multiplayer mode. And we've always played multiplayer mode where you're campaigning together.
Gotcha.
But there is an arena mode where it throws you in, and there's monsters and extra enemies there, but you're there to really fight each other.
I didn't catch that, but now you're making me think that I would love a game like this that's a battle royal.
Oh, nice.
Where you're having to like go in fresh every time and get different weapons and different power-ups, and everybody's getting different stuff. As you were saying, PvP, I was like, this would be cool for like a 16-bit battle royal.
That would be sweet.
I'll have to check that out. I did not pick up on that at all.
Yeah, the one tough thing is because this game came out in 2016 on PC and then didn't come over to Switch until 2019, and I don't think it's gotten much press. Usually the lobbies are not very good. Like it's hard to find other like natural lobbies when you go to play. So you almost need a group of people to all have this game and then coordinate and play that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know we're still looking for people to play with because I think it's up to 4 players. And we've only been doing the 2-player co-op, but we were thinking that there would be some good advantages to having somebody who could play as a healer while the other 2 are laying down damage and things like that. Whereas most of the time, the 2 of us, we've had to kind of go through and pretty much be on the attack together to make it through. But it's a simple game that's got a lot of variety, a lot of options, and it's just well done for being $10 or less. So I think I would recommend it to pretty much anybody if you're into these types of games, roguelike games, kind of retro playing, feeling, looking games.
Yeah, 100%. So if you're looking for it, it is Lost Castle, developed by Hunter Studios and published by another indie. So definitely go check it out. And if you like it, hit us up. We'll swap Switch friend codes.
There you go.
And get a little co-op going. Maybe take this a little bigger, and get some big nights going. I'm sure we could probably try to stream it on our Twitch channel that we just straight up don't use right now. But
yeah,
it would be fun to kind of connect with a couple listeners and, get this game rolling because it is a smaller game, but it would be a lot of fun to play with multiple people.
Yeah, a little party night game.
We hope that you enjoyed our catch-up session here. Definitely keep an eye on GeeK KetchUp social for videos of our Lost Castle playthroughs, and as we move forward in our D&D adventure, posts about our characters. Up next, we're chatting about our recent favorite comic reads, but first, a little taste of things to come from GK. Last season on GeeK KetchUp, a lifelong rivalry went to the next level. But with a new season comes a new game and a shot at redemption. You thought football season was over, but it's just getting started.
Newton steps up, throws for the end zone. Olsen, touchdown!
Follow along as Chris and Kyle roll back the clock one more time, each taking their chosen team and throwing down in another retro sports classic.
Luck steps up. Luck fires downfield. Wide open. T.Y. Hilton will take it the distance. Touchdown, Indianapolis.
Can Kyle redeem himself after coming up short last year? Can Chris repeat as champion? They'll go head-to-head in Tecmo Super Bowl 2015. Check back for updates on stats, standings, and scores from Season 2 of the GeeK KetchUp Retro Sports League Challenge.
73 yards, and that'll get you back in the game.
The Retro Sports League Challenge is well underway for both of us, so be on the lookout for those game playthroughs soon, and our mid-season check-in here in a few weeks. Continuing our catch-up theme, we wanted to chat about some of the comics Chris and I have been reading lately. We are, of course, still reading the X books, but we also like to spread the love to other Marvel, DC, and various publishers' titles. We'll kick it over to Chris first. What have you brought to the table today in the way of comics?
Oh my God, dude. So I counted it up, and I think just in the last week or two, I've had 30 issues to read across 9 different titles. My pull list has definitely grown to the biggest it's probably ever been, and I know you're sending the packages down because you get them at the local shop up there and send them over to me. But I've been reading The Flash, the Green Lantern, the Future State stuff, Doctor Doom, Star Wars Bounty Hunters, Star Wars The High Republic, the final issue of Cyberpunk 27, and then, of course, as you said, the X books post X of Swords that are still in there. So definitely been more than I think I have ever read at any one given time. And the upside really has been that they've almost all been really good.
Nice, yeah.
You would think that with that many that there was going to be some duds, but just where I am at in the stories, or I was, I guess, before reading them, I had some that were wrapping up, like a Doctor Doom that, finished up that 10-issue arc and got better and better as it went, really got some deeper stuff going, made you really want to keep reading a Doctor Doom title like this after they finished it on such an intense note.
Yeah.
But that's canceled, so it's kind of the end of that right now, but definitely worth a shout out. Flash, also epic, with the Future State stuff, really more so because I'm finally getting into following the Flash as the comics go, so really into that as well. But I think if I'm going to call out or really highlight anything here, I've got 2. And the one I wanted to start with really was Star Wars Bounty Hunters.
Yeah.
Coming off The Mandalorian, of course, even though it's not tied into here, the Star Wars hype is up right now. The Bounty Hunter hype is up right now. Mandalorian hype is up right now.
Right.
And finally getting back to this, the first couple of issues of the new title were good and they were action packed, but they weren't like really sucking me in. I was liking them, they were entertaining, and I liked where they were going. But in these last, 3 or 4 issues that I had, the 6, 7, 8s or 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there right now, it just turned the volume up to 11. The art just out of control. Every panel of every page is just packed full of details and action, epic TIE fighter moments, space battles, hand-to-hand combat, shootouts, space pirates, space rescues, and familiar faces making cameos, bro. It was literally just one page after another of intense, everything you want from Star Wars action, pushing the current story forward and filling in holes from the backstory with Valence's, origins and how he came out of, the Empire, being a TIE fighter pilot, and then kind of turning into a cyborg, essentially, not really of his own will, but just for health reasons to keep him alive. And they kind of finally dug into some of that. So beginning to end there on these last couple of issues were just fantastic. I can't wait to see how they're going to end this arc. But it really, really got me pumped up and kind of elevated the Bounty Hunters title, a little bit further up the list than where I had it as far as what I've been following.
Yeah, I knew it started strong. We had talked about it a couple chapters ago that, it was building a really good base in itself and coming in with a few cameos. I know Boba Fett showed up, I think late last time we talked about it. And it's an area we've said time and time again in Star Wars that we need more out of. So it's awesome to hear that somebody is exploring this space, and especially with Star Wars at newfound heights right now, with Mando being massive, the High Republic coming out, all the rumors, and it's never been a better time to be a bounty hunter in the Star Wars universe. So it's great to hear that the comics are going down the same path and hopefully putting a little more focus on this title, maybe in the Star Wars universe, because so far a lot of the focus goes to the main Star Wars comic, or especially the Darth Vader ones.
Right.
So this one almost was slid in under the radar as far as just being a Star Wars Marvel title out there. But to hear that it is getting the proper treatment as far as good storytelling, good character building, and peppering in those cameos is very exciting.
Yeah, Ethan Sachs is the writer and Paolo Villanelli is the artist, and I think both of them seem to be putting kind of everything into it. Not that I know them, but just looking at it, it seems like there's not much being left on the table. Literally, I couldn't say it more. Like, every panel is just so well drawn, so detailed. I like the styling, I like the coloring, and it's just spot on for Star Wars, and really this part of like the universe being very gritty and seedy. It's all bounty hunters and like criminal crime family organizations and everything that they're dealing with. We did see the Boba Fett cameos at the beginning. There was a new hut that showed up and, has done some stuff there. And then really the one other thing I had called out here for this discussion was that the most recent issue had another cameo in it.
Yeah.
And I thought that this was really interesting because while they never got to the point where they said his full name to confirm that he is exactly who I assume he is, there was many references to him being named Solo.
Okay.
And it was during the backstory part of Valance's story where it showed him still as an Imperial TIE fighter pilot, and Solo was part of his squadron. He was another Imperial TIE fighter pilot. And when they finally kind of do the reveal, like I said, they never say it's Han. They never used Han's name, but when they finally showed the character without like his helmet on from the side, I mean, you couldn't look at it and be like, that's not young Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Like, it had the hair.
Right.
They had done just enough to make it in the likeness of Han Solo. And I thought that was really cool because, I know that there's been mention here and there, and I think maybe some of the canon or the books has that, Han Solo did spend a little bit of time in the Empire. I think mostly because he was like running from other trouble and had to do it. It wasn't like full born like I'm for the Empire. It was more of like necessity survival type deal.
Well, I think he was in the academy and then got kicked out.
Okay, maybe.
Or something along those lines.
Yeah, something along those lines. So he had like this little stint that's, been mentioned, or you pick up if you pay enough attention here and there. I hated the Solo movie, so I don't know if they really got into it much there. But the cool thing, though, I was looking at, was like, we don't see this stuff. Here he is leading a squadron of TIE fighters, coming back to save one of his guys who had gone down, and showing kind of that goodness in him. But, it's Han Solo as an Imperial soldier. So I was like, man, I really hope they kind of flesh that out a little more. Might have just been one of those little things that's all we'll get.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to mess with that character too much. But it just was another thing to kind of hype me up as I was reading through these. And I was like, oh, this is getting good.
Yeah. He was in the Imperial Academy or an Imperial Cadet. That's part of that Solo movie very early on. kind of in part of his lore, but that would be sweet because it's exactly what we always say we want out of Star Wars. We like these characters, but don't focus on these characters. But if you are, give us something new about their backstory that we like. You've maybe hinted at, and this is a perfect example that yes, we know that he was in the Imperial Academy at some point, but we don't know much about that experience. So giving full stories, because obviously he wasn't there for a day or a week.
Right.
He was probably in it for some time and then gets out. And then was it a flashback?
Yeah.
Like I'm assuming, yeah. So it was a flashback because then you could then tie him in later. Maybe as a bounty hunter, he's hunting a now smuggler, Han Solo.
Well, it's kind of been interesting how they've done it because early on, I'm pretty sure with the timeline that they're at, Han Solo is currently in kryptonite. Or not kryptonite.
Oh, carbonite.
In carbonite.
Yeah.
And that's because in one of the very first issues when we first saw Boba Fett, there was actually a panel where it was on the Slave One, and they actually had what looked like Han Solo in carbonite. And now that we're kind of beyond that. So yeah, this was a backstory. But what's interesting now is that Valance, the main character of Bounty Hunters, the comic, is directly tied to Boba Fett and Han Solo. So you've got this seemingly, obscure character that not too many people out there that are Star Wars fans probably even know about, who now has kind of this like intertwined history with two of the biggest characters of mainstream Star Wars. So, it may not turn out to be much. Like Boba Fett's not in every issue.
Yeah.
I don't expect Han would be, but I'm just interested to see where they're going to go because of what you said. Potentially new stories, new details getting fleshed out here that come from these characters that we've known for so long.
And I like that idea of peppering in Han and Boba, but not having them there every issue because naturally stars like that are going to take the focus away from Valance in the main character.
Right.
But it also sounds like they're doing a bit of an Ahsoka treatment where you know that he exists and he interacts with these other folks. And we've seen movies, TV shows, whatever further down the line, and he's not there. So where are we headed?
Right.
And it creates this mystery and seemingly gives them anywhere they want to take him, they can take him.
Yeah, and Valance is a cool character. He's not unlike Din Djarin that we see in The Mandalorian. He's kind of got some issues that come with him, some baggage, but also a lot of good in him.
Yeah.
So I think he is a character that could be translated to, the TV screen or the big screen if they wanted to. Maybe not a character that has to get brought to the screen, but, if they wanted a new side character that some people would be interested in or something to introduce into Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian season in the future, I think that Valance is something that they could do that with.
Oh, yeah. And he would certainly be fresh for the TV movie verse of Star Wars as being a cyborg.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
So there's not too many cyborgs that come to mind when you think of Star Wars. I mean, obviously they're out there and there are people that have tech enhancements, but maybe not quite to the level that Valance has.
Yeah, he's like almost Terminator level with the amount of machinery he has in him, but just enough humanity to pull it off. So I know I've got one other here that I was going to highlight, but let's throw it over to you here before circling back. So what's really been on top of your list?
So I've been reading, I've got a massive stack, same as you. Like it was just so big and that I actually had to pick and choose what I was going to focus on because I also have a lot of back catalog. I still haven't read the final arc of Middle West and I still haven't read the first arc of Undiscovered Country. So those are ones that I really need to get to. I know Seven Secrets also recently finished up, and I haven't had a chance to finish that. My focus this go-round has been on the Avengers.
Okay.
And the Age of Khonshu, which is essentially the Avengers versus Moon Knight.
Oh.
That one was really big. And I've been reading a ton of Future State stuff.
Okay.
So I'm going to actually leave it to you to see which one you want to hear about first, seeing if either one of those correlate with your second one.
They don't correlate with my second one, but my second one is from the DC universe, so I'll put it that way. But it's not the Future State stuff, even though Flash and Green Lantern was pretty good. I did enjoy those. So maybe touch on the Avengers, and then we can hit a little bit of the Future State stuff and see where that takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Avengers, this is the arc before the current arc they're in now.
Okay.
And it's Jason Aaron is still writing the Avengers. Jason Aaron is the amazing mind that gave us that Thor run back in the day.
Right.
And Javier Garron, he doing the art on that. And essentially it is a Moon Knight versus the Avengers story arc where Khonshu, who is, Moon Knight is the avatar to Khonshu, who is the god of the moon.
Okay.
And there's the whole backstory about Moon Knight that I'm not going to go into. Mark Spector being a mercenary in Egypt, yada, yada, becoming the Avatar. But basically, Khonshu and Moon Knight foresee this grand disaster happening on Earth. And they take it upon themselves to stop it. But to do it, they need like the combined might of the Avengers. So Moon Knight, in the very beginning of this all, sets out to get certain pieces and weapons from the various like Marvel's heroes.
Okay.
So literally the opening scene to this entire story arc is Moon Knight, Mark Spector, praying outside of Kunlun, and Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, shows up to kind of be like, hey, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And they have this little conversation. Ultimately, it becomes a martial arts battle, and they end up fighting. And Mark Spector, Moon Knight, ends up winning because there's this super moon that's in the sky. So he's like super powerful. And he ends up stealing the Iron Fist.
Wow.
From Danny Rand.
That's the start.
That's the start.
Damn.
And then it sets him on this path where he goes on to basically steal the Eye of Agamotto and become Sorcerer Supreme.
Wow.
Then he goes to the moon and battles Thor and steals Mjolnir.
What?
Yeah, because you come to find out that Uru, which is the metal that Mjolnir's made of, is made of moon rock. And right? And so a powered up Moon Knight actually has control over it. So he wields Mjolnir.
Whoa.
He doesn't actually like hold it and wield it in the sense like Captain America did in Endgame, where he picks it up and like draws lightning.
Yeah.
But he kind of like imagined telekinesis and kind of sending Mjolnir in various places.
Whoa. How did you contain all of this from the group chats? Like, I know you've mentioned Avengers versus Moon Knight, but definitely not in that level of detail. Holy crap.
Yeah, dude, it was wild. And so he's putting all of these powers in these like little amulets that he then wears around his neck.
Okay.
And so he's literally just going like one by one to Avenger and stealing their powers. Like Robbie Reyes, which is Ghost Rider right now, steals his car. So basically he becomes Ghost Rider.
So you're telling me that he's like, because I'm envisioning like a Moon Knight version of Mr. T, with just like a ton of necklaces on.
Actually, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. They're all on thin little strands, but then they have these like amulets hanging down from them.
Yeah.
So like I said, he's going all around. There's a couple side stories happening as well, because the current lineup of the Avengers is Captain America, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Iron Man, She-Hulk, Blade, Ghost Rider, and Thor.
Wow.
So like, and obviously he hit Iron Fist, but to get the power, even though Iron Fist isn't an actual Avenger right now. But yeah, he's doing all of this, and in the beginning, he's not explaining why. He's just doing it. And then eventually you find out because he wants to protect the Earth from this like vision that he foresees. And for the most part, the vision that he foresees is Mephisto.
Oh, okay.
And the evilness of Mephisto. So you get this really cool scene in Avengers 34 where he confronts Mephisto and like is battling with him. And Mephisto is like kind of like, whatever, man, you can throw whatever you want at me. It's not going to affect me. And then all of a sudden he draws in Mjolnir, and Mjolnir bursts right through Mephisto's chest.
Whoa.
And like totally kills him.
Wow.
Like just, and so you're sitting here like, oh my God, he's beaten all of these Avengers, stolen all of this power. And then he just like, without even blinking, kills Mephisto.
And isn't Mephisto essentially like the devil?
Yes. Yeah.
In the Marvel universe, like he's Satan.
Yeah. And it's just wild. So he's gathering all these powers, and then he's converting New York City into being this like area to draw power from to be able to protect the Earth, because at this point he exposes this force is coming and we need to be able to protect the Earth from what's about to happen. And the Avengers are like, we can work together. You don't have to do it this way. And he's like, Khonshu's basically like, no, this is how it needs to happen. So in the process of all of this, mummies get raised from the dead all across the Earth. There are these like acolytes and followers in various areas.
So it's causing chaos.
It's just causing chaos, and people don't, it's coming across as evil, but in the mind of Moon Knight, it's for a higher purpose.
Right.
It's like, we're doing this for your own good.
Yeah.
But the Avengers are like, no, whatever we can do this together. It doesn't need to be just you. And the one holdout from all of this is actually Black Panther. Because Moon Knight goes and is like, look, I need the power that you possess as Black Panther. And Black Panther's like, I can't give it to you. It resides within my blood, within the royal bloodline. Also, no, I'm not going to give it to you. So there's a couple issues where they kind of take Black Panther hostage.
Whoa.
And torture him and kind of leave him locked up. But eventually he breaks out. Eventually all the Avengers break out. And you get this epic battle between Moon Knight and Black Panther. Black Panther ends up winning, but it's not just because you beat Moon Knight doesn't mean you've beat Khonshu. But eventually all the Avengers come together. You also kind of I don't want to spoil too much for anybody that plans on reading it. Part of the reason I didn't talk about it in the group chat is because our good buddy is reading Avengers.
Oh, okay.
But there's a lot of plays back into what Jason Aaron had been doing with Avengers 100,000 BC, which is like the original Avengers formation. So it's like the very first Iron Fist, very first Black Panther. I think Odin is on that team instead of Thor, and things like that. Like the original Ancient One is there as the Sorcerer Supreme.
Gotcha.
So like it does a lot of callbacks into that. And then it also sets up the next story arc, which is the Phoenix Force showing up.
Yeah, I saw that there's going to be a whole new Phoenix situation.
Yeah, and that ultimately, like the Phoenix also mixed with Starbrand, who's like a baby right now. Her, like the inherent power that she has, that's all the forces that Khonshu was trying to prepare the Earth for, but ultimately, like, the Avengers wouldn't allow it to happen. So, the Avengers, in classic Avengers status, they regroup, they reform, and they take everything back. But you get a couple, like, little cool moments, because as Moon Knight starts to lose, he starts to lose his control over the various powers that he stole. So Thor gets his hammer back and this and that. But a couple of the other powers that he took get spread out amongst those Avengers. So without going into crazy detail, just telling you, we do get a Sorcerer Supreme blade.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So probably some temporary mix-ups just to kind of like what if, kind of moments where some of these characters we're familiar with get blended up, hybrids.
Yeah, and
that's kind of wild.
She-Hulk also gets imbued with the power of Iron Fist.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
you get an iron She-Hulk.
She'd be unstoppable.
Yeah, and those panels, during those panels, they're like fighting like werewolves and mummies and all this crazy stuff. So it's what ended up happening is I typically don't read the Avengers or Justice League or the big team up comics unless there's something that catches my eye.
Yeah.
And in this case, I like Moon Knight. I'm a big Moon Knight fan. So I was like, oh, I can't avoid this story arc. But every time I do read an Avengers or Justice League comic, it's usually like amazing. And I don't know why I'm so shocked by that. Because why wouldn't the biggest publishers put their biggest creative teams on their biggest books?
Yeah.
So it was just highly recommend. I think a lot of it was giving Moon Knight the treatment because he's got the new TV show coming.
Right.
With Oscar Isaac playing Mark Spector. So they need to start putting Moon Knight back in the forefront so people get familiar with him again. But it was just through and through really cool. A bit of a flat ending, I guess, for all the hype and all the build of him gathering the powers and having these epic battles. it ended flat because they were preparing for the Phoenix Force.
Yeah, it was like a setup.
Yeah, exactly. It was all to set up that next story. But as a self-contained, 6 little issues, it was an awesome read with some really cool high action moments.
Very cool. Very cool. Might have to check out the trade when that gets available on that one.
Yeah, and I think what they're going to go do with the Phoenix Force is going to be just as cool because towards the end, the Phoenix Force does show up and possess Moon Knight.
Well, I can imagine. I know in some of the issues I've been reading, there's been little advertisements.
Yeah.
And so, like, one of them I saw was like a Phoenix version of the Black Panther. And I was like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I started picking up that they've been teasing like who's going to be the next Phoenix and all of that kind of stuff. So I imagine they're going to have some big surprises in store for the Avengers line, but nothing that I was reading at the moment. But that's pretty cool to see that that's how they set it up was with the Moon Knight stuff. I had definitely didn't have that on my radar at all.
No.
I haven't been reading Avengers or anything like that, but super cool. At least it came out for the most part, it sounds like pretty good. And
oh, yeah.
As a big Moon Knight guy, gave you some good payoffs or some really sweet stuff that he did.
Yeah, like and that's what it was all about for me is with arcs like this, it's nothing quite going to be universe impacting. It's probably going to be self-contained. By the time it starts and finishes, the status quo is going to get reset, and that is what happened. But you got some really cool Moon Knight moments, especially when he had the various necklaces and powers, and he was wielding dual iron fists while also doing magic and whipping Mjolnir all around while also being an expert fighter in his own right. It just, all in all, it made for some really, really sweet moments. And painted him in kind of that gray light, like, because all the heroes know him, and they also know that his history with mental illness. So that became part of the story. Like, is this just another relapse of your mental illness?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm in full control. I know what I'm doing. This is for the betterment of everyone.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned that you've got the future state stuff too that you wanted to talk about, but I was wondering actually, maybe I can jump in here with the other option I had, and then that might set us up for going back into future state to wrap up. What do you think about that?
Let's do it.
All right, and I say that because essentially the other highlight that I had here is from DC. It is a character that is in the future state stuff, of course, but it was not that event. I had to highlight here the Tales from the Dark Multiverse Flashpoint one-off that you brought and kind of picked up. I had no idea that this was even out there, and you found it, bought it, sent it to me. And it was a great surprise book that I didn't see coming. But as a big Flash fan, Flashpoint, of course, is one of my favorite stories. I think a lot of people really like the Flashpoint story from years back. And so this was really kind of a cool way to see a different take of it, or maybe like more of a ripple effect of something that happened coming out of the Flashpoint.
Well, what I know is that with the Tales from the Multiverse series that DC's been doing, because you're right, like I bought this book for you without asking, without telling, and just kind of, slipped it into the pack of the comics I mailed you. But DC's been doing this Tales from the Multiverse, and there are a series of one-shots that explore if you took an individual what-if scenario or, different universe and expanded the story out from it. So in the past, we had seen an expanded Batman with Azrael as Batman. And kind of if that had continued on, if Batman hadn't returned and taken the mantle back, what would have continued on? And then this one, in the same vein, it took the Flashpoint universe and what happened if Barry didn't come back,
right?
And reset. And I believe Flashpoint reset the universe for the New 52. My timeline could be slightly off, or generations of comic could be slightly off, but I'm pretty sure the Flashpoint kicked off the New 52. So it would be what is exploring if that never happened, if Flashpoint just continued to Flashpoint.
Exactly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there totally on you.
No.
But like it was a series that DC has been doing, and they're all self-contained one-shots, and they've been a ton of fun.
Yeah, you hit it on the head though, and that's exactly what happened here with this one was, at the end of Flashpoint, the original, right? Barry goes back and he kind of undoes all the stuff that he messed up and resets the timeline. Whereas here, this one opened up with, the world still a very dark place, and it looked like some time essentially had gone by. Barry still doesn't have his speed force, and he's essentially trying to work with Thomas Wayne as Batman, because of course that was the deal with Batman in Flashpoint, was Bruce was the one that died, Thomas survived, Thomas became Batman. And so Barry's working with Thomas to restore his speed force with the use of lightning, and it kind of gives you this immediate swerve because when the lightning strikes, it actually kills Barry.
Yeah.
And it's Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, that hit him with the lightning, so he comes in. And so this whole story is essentially like the what if, Flash is gone and Reverse Flash is the one that's here interacting with Thomas Wayne in the world that is just absolute chaos. And in Flashpoint, we got to see some of the Wonder Woman leading the Amazons through, some like war type stuff, and Aquaman leading, the Atlanteans on their side, and there's just a lot of really bad things going on.
Yeah.
Well, in this world, the Dark Multiverse part, it takes that even further. The Atlanteans are pretty much ruling, or they've captured a lot of Africa and a bunch of different parts of the world.
Wow,
The
nice.
Themyscians, the Amazons they're like residing in London, like they've taken over England and most of Europe. And then you've got like America that's just desperately struggling to hold on in all of this, because even though they've still got some heroes, and like some of the Justice League heroes,
Right.
they are no match for the full might of these other two armies, essentially. And so, won't crush everything, but this thing was just badass through and through. And so once the Reverse Flash comes on the scene, Thawne's very smart. He's very capable. He's very powerful. And so he pretty much kind of twists Thomas Wayne around a little bit because he knows a lot about Batman and those characters anyways. But some of the really crazy stuff that happened here was essentially Thawne takes over the entire U.S.
Oh.
Like, he is essentially a shadow president.
Yeah.
And he does that by in a blink of an eye, killing Green Arrow, Captain Cold, Cyborg, and a Green Lantern within just a couple of seconds inside the Oval Office.
Oh, snap.
Like, the president's meeting with the Justice League trying to figure out what to do, and Thawne pretty much comes in and just wipes them all out, and he's like, yo, bro, I'm the guy you need.
Yeah.
And takes over, essentially the power of America. But it went on even further, in order to send like a message to the other armies. There's a whole like page or two of him just wrecking like 1,000 Atlantean soldiers and putting Aquaman's trident through his chest. So he kills Aquaman.
Nice.
And then throws him at the feet of Wonder Woman. So, I mean, it's just like really, really beastie, just epic moments where you're just watching Reverse Flash, with no limits.
Yeah.
Nobody who can stop him because there's no other speedsters, just waxing all the other heroes that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just wild.
That's so cool. And that's what I love about these Tales from the Multiverse one-shots is there are no limits.
Right.
This is its own little pocket universe, and it does not going to affect overall canon, so you can get ballistic with what you want to do, what you want to try, where you want to take these characters, and knowing that, Wonder Woman and Aquaman were feuding in the Flashpoint universe to begin with, but then throwing Reverse Flash into the mix as just like a wild card rogue. That sounds pretty epic. I think it's crazy to think that he stabbed Aquaman with his own trident.
Yep.
You got to tell me where it went from there. Like, did it kick off a new war? Is he now the king? Is it like Chronicles of Riddick style where like he's the king now? Like, how does that work?
Nah, well, he's always got a little bit of his own arrogance, right? So he kind of looks at it more as he sends the message to the armies, like, y'all can't deal with me. But what ultimately happens is that all that does is it actually forces the Amazonians and the Atlanteans to forge an alliance
Oh.
and come after him.
Nice.
Because he was like threatening Diana and all of that when he went and dumped the body and pretty much was just like, yep, I did this. Don't mess with me. And we can all be peaceful. You can have this part of the world. I'll have the other part of the world, and we'll move on. And they aren't okay with that. But on the flip side, Batman essentially starts to work with a like backup version of Cyborg. So when Cyborg gets killed, he's essentially got like a backup computer version of himself and downloads into another robot.
Yeah.
And they go and they unleash the Superman of the world, which in Flashpoint, Superman wasn't just like raised by Martha and his dad. They kept him as an experiment. The American government was very worried about him, and
Yeah. They kept him in a bunker beneath the earth so he couldn't get anywhere close to the sun.
right, keep him under control, and they were testing him. So Cyborg's aware of it. They go and they unleash him, thinking, okay, he's the only guy that should, in theory, be able to take down Reverse Flash. And so that happens. There's this huge fight. Superman takes down Reverse Flash, and they've got him like ready, to defeat him. And Superman doesn't want to kill him, but Thomas Wayne is still getting eaten up at the fact that he knows that Barry had the ability to go back in time and fix everything because Barry had told him that.
Yeah.
So Thomas knows that Reverse Flash, with Barry being dead, that Reverse Flash can do the same thing. And so right as they're finishing off Reverse Flash, like Superman's got him right there, Thomas Wayne shoots him in the head and kills Superman.
What?
Yeah!
Like kryptonite bullet?
Dude,
or just
well, they don't go into that detail, but he just straight up like walks up next to it and just boom, point blank, murders Superman.
That's awesome. I hope visually it's kind of a parallel to how Thomas stabbed Reverse Flash through the chest in Flashpoint. Like, I don't know if you remember that panel from Flashpoint.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that, but it was similar. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Still paying homage and ridiculous nonetheless.
Yeah. So it was kind of wild because Thomas is just consumed by the fact that, he wants Bruce essentially to be able to live. He wants his family back.
Sure.
Whatever that means. So he pretty much saves Reverse Flash and then tells him, you have to go and change things. And so the whole thing ended with Reverse Flash going and doing his deal to change things, but where they kind of left it open. And now I'm like, I need like a whole like Flashpoint 2.0 section.
Yeah.
Because the way they leave it open, of course, is, Reverse Flash isn't, at times he can be good, but he's mostly bad. He's not quite like a full anti-hero, but he has those moments.
Yeah.
But he goes back and he's doing his thing and he's acting like, he's being kind of good in this moment, but then there's like these like narration bubbles, and he's talking about how, well, I can make everything the way I want it. I can make this my world. If I'm going to go back in the past and start messing with stuff, I'll just make it all in my favor. And he starts calling himself the Flash, and then the last panel, it doesn't tell you if it's a good or a bad thing, but the last panel, last page really, is kind of a classic Justice League type moment where it's like all the heroes are coming like at you, like you see those, and you see a lot of like the Hawkman and Superman and a lot of those characters, and Reverse Flash is right in the middle, kind of looking like normal Flash. So it's almost like he created this Justice League, and you see like Wally behind him and his gear, but it's the Reverse Flash symbol instead of the normal symbol,
Right.
So it kind of makes you wonder, like, did Reverse Flash decide he was going to be good and like form the Justice League, or did he form like a villainous Justice League and turned all of the powerful people into villains that he kind of runs or controls? You don't know, but that's how it all ends.
Yeah, it's really unclear. That's part of Thawne's like mystique, is that he's inspired by the Flash, right? Like he wanted to be the Flash, but then when he inevitably met Barry Allen, he wasn't what he envisioned, he wasn't what he was inspired by, and ultimately went to a world of villainy. But in the beginning, he wanted to be like the Flash. So I like the dynamics of that, where he creates this universe where he becomes the Barry Allen that he always wanted Barry Allen to be.
Kind of, yeah. And like I said, like in most of the Dark Point or the Dark Flashpoint story here, he refers to himself as the Flash.
Right.
And so like it was kind of interesting. Like when he's introducing himself to people who don't know who he is, he's like, I'm the Flash,
Right.
not Reverse Flash. So it was definitely playing on some of that stuff, but they never went so far as to fully explain it or tell you.
I like that. And really, I do, because I got to tell you, the other Tales from the Multiverse one-shots, just as intense, just as crazy, and they all do seem to leave a slight, like, cliffhanger at the end, like, leaving the door open. If they want to come back to this universe, they can come back to this universe. So hearing this one, I would love to see a follow-up. You know, it doesn't have to be canon. It can be its own pocket universe. You can make it its own thing, put it under the DC Black Label imprint. Like, that would be cool and very fitting, because it seems like it's a little more mature.
Definitely,
but
yeah.
I would like to see this universe and all of these Tales from the Dark Multiverse kind of explored.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't go so far as to be like it was as good as original Flashpoint, because it was also shorter.
Right.
But for a lot of the other boxes to check, as far as intensity, entertainment, the art was great, you know, the story was great, all of that, it won in every box, you know. It did it for me.
Nice. Well, speaking of kind of multiverses, we can wrap up here with some future state talk. I won't dive into any one book in particular, just in the interest of time, but I've been reading a few different future state books here, so we can spend a few minutes just kind of chatting about future state in general, because you've also been reading a few. You read, like you said, The Flash and Green Lantern.
Yeah.
I'd also been reading the Nightwing, Robin Eternal, Teen Titans, and Justice League books as well. I think I got the chance to read the first Flash and Green Lantern before I sent them your way. Didn't get a chance to read the second two. But what are your thoughts on this whole future state? Like, it's a contained 2-month event. Most titles are only getting 2 issues. Some are getting 4. It's really about introducing new characters, younger characters into positions that we are familiar with. So there's a new Superman, there's a new Wonder Woman, there's a new Batman. But the legacy characters, your Clark Kents, your Princess Dianas, your Bruce Waynes, they're still around, but they've moved on with their lives, and they now have these new heroes fulfilling these roles. So I didn't know, of the ones that you've been reading, if you've been liking them or not liking them.
I liked them. I think I either had the wrong impression, or just the stories that I read, especially The Flash, wasn't as different as I was expecting based on what I had seen and some of what you had told me with what DC was trying to do here with Future State. So like with The Flash, especially because the original, like the cover looked like it was maybe a new character or a female version of the Flash or whatever. It ended up not really being that way. It almost felt like it was just a normal Flash story. It was in the future.
Yeah.
You know, it was like definitely a little bit of an older Barry Allen with, you know, like a white beard and some of that, but it was still Barry Allen and Jay Garrick, and Wally West is involved, and, you know, kind of all the same players. Iris was there. Like, not much had changed except for the fact that Barry didn't have the Speed Force, but that's not even something that we haven't seen before. So
yeah.
So while I liked it, and like there was some really intense moments in what they did with who the villain was and everything for those 2 issues, I was like, this is sweet, but it just felt more like a short arc normal Flash story, or like a one-shot type deal, more so than this future state trying new things, trying new characters and all that, which is what I expected.
Right. Well, I know they introduced the main villain, that is Wally West as Famine.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the biggest difference, was that, you know, the villain was somebody familiar, and that was pretty sweet. Like, he was definitely a really big-time villain, but I don't know if I really saw that as anything too drastically different than stuff that we kind of see in comics regularly.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, we've definitely seen heroes become villains and vice versa throughout the world of comics before, so...
Yeah, it's true. I have similar sentiments to a handful of the ones that I read. Like, Teen Titans was kind of the same ordeal. That one was a little all over the place, because it was what I put together. It's actually like the central story to the status quo of Future State.
Okay.
Like, the Titans were responsible for this event that happened years ago, and it put the world on this path. And ultimately, the Justice League ended up not trusting the Titans anymore, and then the Titans kind of fell apart, and the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse came and started killing off members. And the actual Teen Titans two-parter jumps from various spots in time, like of the past, and then the future state present, and then also went into some like mental states. So it was a little disconjointed as to far as what they were trying to do and the story they were trying to tell. The one big part I wanted to highlight that I thought was pretty cool, they did introduce Red X, which is awesome that we got Red X on the pages of comics, no longer exclusive to Teen Titans, the animated show. Like, there is a Red X. We don't know who's under the mask. We know that it's not Dick Grayson, but we also know that Dick Grayson once had the Red X mask. He once went around as Red X. I don't want to get too deep into that because that's like Teen Titans animated series stuff. But the cool thing about that is he teams up with the current Red X, and you find out that Dick Grayson's new mantle in Teen Titans is he's Deathwing.
Ah, so like a new name.
He's replaced Deathstroke. He wears Deathstroke's mask and everything.
Okay, I saw one picture of that character, and it was that hybrid Nightwing Deathstroke look, but I didn't realize that that's what they were calling him, was Deathwing.
Deathwing, and like as somebody makes the joke, they're like, "Oh, you went with Deathwing? I think I would have won with Dick." And he starts to say like Dick Stroke, and like they were like somebody cuts him off, and it made for like a little humorous moment peppered into Teen Titans. But I'm right there with you as far as some of the other stuff. Like it wasn't too out of the ordinary, and maybe we're just reading the wrong ones. Like Robin Eternal was good, not great. I'm really, really still looking for that quintessential Tim Drake story that I can read. I've tried to read Tim Drake on several occasions, and it's never worked out. He's died in literally every Tim Drake series I've ever tried to read, he dies. Nightwing, the individual, was pretty cool. He's kind of fighting the good fight against the Magistrate in Gotham. But the highlight is probably Justice League.
Okay.
But even that one, it was really about the new characters. It was the first one that finally fit the bill of Future State as far as introducing new, fresh characters into legacy roles.
Okay.
And what I mean by this is there's a new team leader, Green Lantern, and Joe Mullen. So she's the new GL team leader. The aged up Jonathan Kent is Superman. There's a new Wonder Woman in Yara, who's just another Amazonian who's taken on that role. The Flash is pretty unique. It's actually Jess Chambers, who is the Flash from Earth 11. So what ended up happening is the Flash from Earth 11 came to Earth 0 to warn them of this like apocalyptic thing that was going to happen. And then it did happen. And then they stayed to work in the fallout. So I think that is the Flash that we had expected to show up in your series.
Yeah, it's odd that they didn't.
But they didn't. Yeah, like they didn't at all.
Well, and even Green Lantern, like it's odd that there's a different Green Lantern there in Justice League, but I don't believe, even though the two Green Lantern future states had like 6 stories in them all together, I don't believe that was one of them at all. No,
Joe wasn't. Yeah, she didn't show up in that at all. It was all really strange. And of course, the new Batman is there just to kind of round out the team. The new Batman, which is Tim Fox or Jace Fox, it's the same person. And then the last one is Andy Curry, who is the daughter of Arthur Curry and Mara.
Okay.
And she goes by Aquawoman. So the new team dynamic was really cool, and it told a nice little contained story. It was a 2-parter, so the first half of the book was with the new Justice League, and the second half was with Justice League Dark. But it was great how they introduced the new Justice League, how they worked together. They had a new set of rules where they agreed to not communicate and not get to know each other, because that's what doomed the original Justice League in this story arc, is that
personal ties and stuff.
Personal ties became kind of somebody destroyed the Justice League from within because there were too many personal ties and the Justice League had gotten too big. So they had set a new set of ground rules to make it so they didn't know each other's personal identities and they didn't communicate outside of Justice League business. Ultimately, that gets flushed down the drain in part 2 because they fight the Hyper Clan, which is a group of white Martians who imitate, because Martians can shapeshift and mind read.
Yep.
And then the white Martians is like a subspecies of Martian. There's green Martians and white Martians.
Yeah. The white ones are like the more intense, like a little bit bigger ones, right?
Yeah, and their like psychic abilities are a little more powerful, I believe.
Yeah.
Based on my knowledge from Young Justice and knowing that, Miss Martian, it was a white Martian. So all of that was really cool, and it planted a couple fun seeds, but I don't know if what I thought Future State was going to be ended up being that either, because like we talked about, we thought it was this introduction of a bunch of new characters, see who stuck, and then work them into canon storylines. And I guess I got a little bit of that out of Justice League with the new team. And I definitely like the new Flash, this Earth 11 Flash. They're very unique in their own way, and they're hiding their identity a little bit. So they're also non-binary.
Okay.
You know that their name is Jess Chambers.
Yeah.
So that's unique, and that's kind of fun. But the other ones, it didn't quite hit the way I wanted it to hit. I thought it would create this spark of interest in being like, okay, well, when they reintroduce this character down the line, I'm going to be first up front. I want this book. I can't avoid it. And
yeah.
So I'm not sure if it did that for me either.
Yeah, it's really odd, and I'm almost disappointed to hear in a way that they actually had the new characters in Justice League, but not in the other books. Because, like, of course, it was a weird spot for me coming in and finally starting to follow Flash just a little bit before they went and did something like this. But I was like, okay, it was like the speedsters, I like speedsters, all of the above. And so I was completely open and okay with seeing what new character they might introduce, and then they didn't. But to know that they did it in another book and didn't bring them to the actual, like, Flash book or the Green Lantern thing, just the kind of, I just don't understand that, to be honest, because especially with the Green Lantern book.
Yeah.
Like, the Green Lantern books were literally cut into, like, 3 different mini books, or maybe not even mini books because they were thicker issues.
Right.
But you got to see different lanterns in different places, some that have lost their power, some that I hadn't.
Yeah.
Old lanterns, new lanterns, and all this. And really, there was only like one story truly out of all of those that stuck out as, okay, here was a little bit newer character, at least to me. She did some pretty awesome stuff. She was going up against some Yellow Core lanterns and the whole 9 yards, some Sinestro Core lanterns. And everything else was kind of just throwaway in a way.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it's like, why did they even do it? I don't know if I'm even understanding why they even did it, if they weren't going to bring all the other characters into their own books so that way they could be fleshed out a little bit more, or give us a little bit more backstory, or whatever it may be. That's kind of what I expected, right? Was like the Justice League would have them all together, and then the individual books would be 2 or 3 issues or whatever it is for that new character to really establish them. And then kind of together, you would have this package of Future State potential.
Future State, yeah. And I think some of them did. Like, I've heard that the Dark Detective and the new Batman books, they definitely did that. I know that the Wonder Woman books and a few of the Superman books did that. But it does seem strange. But not all of them did it. Like, and maybe we just chose wrong. But we also, it feels like we chose some heavy hitters.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
In Flash and Green Lantern and Teen Titan. Like, Teen Titans was big, and there were a lot of things that happened there, which were pretty cool. I'm not going to sit here and say that it wasn't cool, but it also all felt rushed because it was only 2 months, 2 issues. And I don't know. I'm not a fan of this. We have a consistent story, like basically what I know happened to you with Flash, where, the ongoing Flash was happening. It was telling, maybe not the best story ever, but a good story. And then it gets interrupted by Endless Winter.
Yeah.
Then it gets interrupted by Future State. And now it's going to be 3 months worth of books before you get back to the regularly scheduled programming.
Which is all it's going to be, is regularly scheduled programming. Or at least that's what it seems like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it just does seem a little strange, and I understand wanting to introduce new characters, the full gamut, not arguing that, but there does seem, do you have to interrupt your regular flow to get this done? Could you just pocket universe these, or
Right.
maybe you have to interrupt it, so force people to read it, because not everybody's going to go out and read Tales of the Multiverse and find those pocket universes. But
Yeah.
I hope that something sticks. There were a lot of positives. Like, I don't want it to seem like we're being too negative on Future State, because a lot of the individual moments were really cool.
Right.
A couple of the personal touches were really cool. The art was dynamite. New creative teams, new writers. I like to see all of that. But the execution of it all as a publisher did seem to be a little off.
Yeah, not bad, but just not quite what it was sold to be.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe that was just half the problem, was the messaging was a little odd. So our expectations were in the wrong place or something along those lines. But I just remember reading it going, yeah, like, I'm enjoying this, but this is not what I thought it was going to be. Like, that was the overall sentiment I had the whole time I'm reading. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, that was Future State.
Yeah.
Kind of the same as current state.
And same here. And I guess we'll see over the next 6-8 months if, like, when they get back to regular scheduled programming, if they start to work these characters in to build towards Future State, because they have said that the current universe, Future State world, and everything that's happening is canon and is where we're headed on the DC timeline. So I would like to see them building that, but how many years is it going to take to get to that payoff?
Yeah.
And, and I like long-term storytelling. Us talking about wrestling has proved that we like long-term storytelling, but
I could see that if these are more just glimpses, and then they're going to build things over time to where they showed us, where the world is today, then okay, that could be a little bit more of an intriguing proposition in the long game. But they're going to have to make good on that promise.
Yeah. They're gonna have to do something. You can't reset the universe again, or convergence it, which is what they did a couple years ago. That's very similar to Future State, and I could be wrong, but I don't remember a payoff to that. I remember it was very similar. It was a blend of universes, characters mixing with other characters that they had never mixed with before, some new status quos, but there was never an ultimate payoff. So hopefully Future State doesn't end up that way, and we get to see the Magistrate take over Gotham, and we get to see the Horsemen of the Four Apocalypse show up, and the destruction from within of the Justice League and things like that. And obviously with the Flash, how they lose their powers. And I know one cool moment of that little Flash book was, I guess, off panel, off paper, they went around and gathered the various weapons from the rogues, but we never got to see it. And I was like, but seeing that would be cool.
That's how we get to see how they do one, right before it kind of goes into the stuff with Wally. But that's exactly the premise, was that they spent the last 5 years defeating all the different rogues and collecting, Captain Cold's Cold Gun and, the boomerangs and just everything that's out there. And ultimately, and since you didn't read 2, I will say, they do circle back a little bit to it, and Barry ends up like modifying all of them to his needs. Yeah. And there's actually one point where he's kind of like armored up, almost like a Super Shredder kind of look, but like in his Flash suit, and he's got all the different gadgets, like strapped to him, ready to go. And so that was kind of cool. But we never got to see all those battles of how they collected them from all the different villains.
Right. So hopefully we get that payoff, and definitely if other people are reading Future State and they're like, hey, you guys are way off base, this is the one that you got to go check out, please let us know. Because I do feel like maybe we missed the boat and read the wrong books, because it seems like a lot of comics are just knocking it out of the park right now. But for whatever reason, Future State didn't quite stick the landing.
Yeah, so as you said, definitely a lot of great comics out there right now, and it's been hard to keep up with every title, but it's also been super exciting to see just how good some of these stories that we've been following for a while have both started, progressed, and closed. We hope you enjoyed hearing about what we've been excited about, but we'd also love to hear about what comics you've been really enjoying lately. Like Kyle just said, if you've been into Future State, definitely reach out and let us know on social media. And we are always looking for new recommendations, so if you've got some other books that we didn't touch on today that you love, definitely share them with us. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, be sure to hit the subscribe button to get new chapters of GeeK KetchUp every 2 weeks on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Be sure to follow the show on social media, and you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at GeeK KetchUp Podcast, or on Twitter and Instagram at GeeK KetchUp Pod. Links to all these accounts are in the show notes below and on our website, GeeKKetchUpPodcast.com. Stay saucy, you nerds.